Hey everyone, welcome to the Chilling Hour, where the stories never let you sleep. My name's Daniel Carter, and I'm 31 years old. I'm from Colorado Springs, and what I'm about to tell you is not some campfire tale or Reddit creepypasta. This happened to me last summer in the Rocky Mountains, and I still wake up drenched in sweat thinking about it. People think hiking brings you closer to nature, to peace, to something spiritual. But sometimes, nature hides things, old things, that don't want to be found. It started with a plan for a 3-day hike through Lost Creek Wilderness. I'd done it a few times before, but this time I wanted to push deeper into an area marked on older maps as unmaintained. My girlfriend Emily couldn't come because of work, so I went solo. I'd done plenty of solo trips before, so it didn't bother me. I packed everything: tent, stove, first aid, GPS, bear spray. Everything was fine, until it wasn't. The first day was clear, sunny, and uneventful. Birds chirped, the air smelled like pine, and I even saw a herd of elk in the distance. That night, I made camp beside a small stream. The sound of the water lulled me to sleep. But around 2 a.m., I woke up. It wasn't from a dream. It was from a sound, soft footsteps circling my tent. I froze. I've had deer wander close before, even a curious fox once, but this sounded heavier, like a person. I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" No response. The steps stopped. I sat there, holding my breath, waiting. Then I heard it, a low, wet exhale, just outside the fabric of my tent. My hand trembled as I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the door in one quick motion. The beam cut through the darkness. Nothing, just trees, mist, and silence. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't sleep much after that. In the morning, I found footprints in the dirt near the tent. Human footprints, but bare. No shoes, no socks. Just the impression of long toes and a deep heel. The skin had left small pebbles pressed into the mud. They led back toward the tree line and disappeared. I should have turned back right then, but I told myself it was probably some weirdo or another camper fooling around. So I packed up and kept hiking. By midday, I realized I hadn't seen another person all morning. The trails were narrowing, branches reaching over like skeletal arms. I followed my GPS and compass, but the deeper I went, the quieter it got. No birds, no insects, just the crunch of my boots on leaves. The silence started getting into my head. That afternoon, I found something strange. A small wooden totem, carved crudely out of a stick, hanging from a low branch. It looked like a human figure, with long arms and a hole where its mouth should have been. The mouth was a perfect circle, like it was screaming. I stopped and stared at it. The wind moved it slightly, making it creak. I felt uneasy, but didn't touch it. I walked on and noticed more of them, dozens hanging from trees along the path. Each one different, but all with that hollow mouth. It felt like I was walking through a graveyard of warnings. By the time the sun started setting, I decided to make camp near a small clearing. The clearing had an old fire ring, probably from other hikers. I set up my tent and made a small fire. The light made me feel safer. I ate my dinner, listened to the fire crackle, and tried to shake off the feeling that the woods were watching me. Around 9 p.m., the wind picked up. The trees moaned, branches rattled. Then I heard a sound that froze me completely, whistling. A low, shaky whistle. The tune wasn't familiar, but it came from deep in the woods, just beyond where my firelight ended. It wasn't an animal. It was human. "Hey!" I shouted, trying to sound confident. "Who's out there?" The whistling stopped. I stared into the dark for what felt like forever. I could see nothing beyond the fire's orange glow. Then, just before I went back into my tent, I thought I saw something. A tall, thin shape between the trees. It was still, almost blending with the bark, but I could swear it was watching me. My flashlight flickered, and when it came back on, it was gone. Inside the tent, I couldn't calm down. Every rustle, every gust of wind felt like footsteps. I finally drifted into uneasy sleep around midnight. That's when the real nightmare began. I woke to the sound of whistling again, this time right outside my tent. My heart jumped into my throat. It was the same tune, but slower, sadder. I reached for my flashlight, but before I could turn it on, something pressed against the tent wall. A hand. I could see the shadow of it through the thin fabric, long fingers dragging down the side. Then, another hand on the opposite wall. It circled me slowly, dragging those fingers like claws around the whole tent. I shouted, "Leave me alone!" and grabbed my knife. The whistling stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, in the faint light of the moon, I saw something move outside, bare feet, pale against the dirt, circling once, then vanishing into the woods. I didn't sleep again. As soon as dawn broke, I packed up and started heading back the way I came. Or at least, I tried to. After a few hours, I realized I was lost. The GPS said I was on the trail, but nothing looked familiar. The totems were gone. The trees looked older, denser. I couldn't even hear the stream anymore, just dead quiet. I walked until my legs burned. Around noon, I stumbled upon something that made my stomach drop. My own campsite. The same fire ring, same flattened patch of grass where my tent had been. Except now, hanging from the trees above it, were 5 new totems, each carved crudely, and one of them looked like me. It had short brown hair carved into it, a little pack on its back, and the same jacket color I was wearing. My knees nearly buckled. I turned and started running, no direction, just away. The forest felt endless. My GPS froze, the screen glitching out. My compass spun wildly. The light dimmed, though it was only mid-afternoon. Then I heard it again, the whistle. Closer this time. Too close. I turned toward the sound and saw movement between the trees. A tall figure, grayish skin stretched tight over bones, its limbs too long. It didn't move like a person. It jerked, twisted, stepped sideways. Its face was wrong. No eyes, no nose, just that open circular mouth, carved like the totems. And from it came the whistling. I ran. I don't know how long or in which direction. My lungs screamed. My legs felt like fire. I tripped, rolled down a small slope, and hit my head on a rock. When I came to, it was dark again. The forest was silent. My backpack was gone. My flashlight was broken. My head throbbed. I tried my phone, but there was no signal, no battery. I was alone in a place that didn't feel real anymore. Then the smell hit me. Rot, wet earth, and decay. I turned slowly, shining my dying flashlight. Behind me stood what looked like an old log cabin, half collapsed and covered in moss. Smoke drifted from the chimney, even though it looked abandoned for decades. I should have run, but something pulled me toward it. The door creaked open as I approached, like it had been waiting. Inside, it was dark and damp, filled with carvings, hundreds of them, lining the walls. Faces, all with mouths hollowed out. Some had hair attached. Real hair. My stomach turned. Then I saw something on the floor, my backpack. I stepped closer and froze. Sitting beside it, in the corner, was the same tall, gray figure. It sat motionless, its head tilted to the side, hands folded in its lap. I couldn't see its face clearly, but I could hear that same soft whistle echoing through the room. I took one step back. The floor creaked. Its head snapped toward me. That face, I can still see it. Its mouth stretched open wider than humanly possible. That perfect hollow circle. The sound pouring from it wasn't whistling anymore. It was screaming, a low guttural howl that made my vision blur. I bolted out of there, crashing through the woods, not caring where I was going. I don't remember much after that. Just running, falling, darkness. When I finally woke again, I was lying on a dirt road. A ranger found me the next morning, wandering barefoot, covered in scratches and mud. I don't remember losing my boots, but they were gone. The rangers took me to the hospital in Bailey. I told them everything. The whistling, the carvings, the figure. They said I'd probably gotten disoriented, dehydrated, hallucinating from lack of sleep. Maybe I hit my head harder than I thought. They sent people to search my route but found nothing. No totems, no cabin. Just an area that didn't appear on modern maps, an old burn zone from the 1940s. They told me I must have imagined it. But I didn't imagine what happened next. When I got home, I unpacked what little I had left. My tent, my knife, some torn clothes. And at the bottom of the bag, there was something else. A small wooden totem. It looked just like the others, except this one had something carved into its back. My name. Daniel. I threw it out immediately, but the next morning, it was back, on my kitchen table. Dry pine wood, same smell of moss and smoke. I burned it that night in the fire pit behind my house. I watched it blacken and crumble. Thought it was over. But then, 2 nights later, I woke to a familiar sound outside my window. Whistling. Soft, slow. The same tune from the forest. I live alone, second-floor apartment. Nobody should have been outside that window. I got up, heart racing, and pulled back the curtain. In the yard below, standing motionless in the moonlight, was the tall figure. Long arms, gray skin, and that same circular mouth. It lifted its hand slowly and pointed straight at me. I backed away, tripped over a chair, and when I looked again, it was gone. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I keep hearing it, the whistling. Sometimes in the woods behind my complex, sometimes in the hallway outside my door. Once, I heard it inside my apartment, coming from the bathroom, but when I opened the door, there was nothing there. Just a faint smell of rot. I moved twice since then. Different towns, different states. It doesn't matter. Every time I think I'm safe, I find something waiting for me. A small wooden carving in my bag, on my dashboard, once even in the pocket of my jacket. Always with my name. I don't go hiking anymore. I don't even go near the woods. But lately, I've been dreaming about them. I see the cabin again, the carvings, the figure sitting in the corner. In the dream, it stands up and walks toward me, whistling that same tune. I always wake up before it reaches me. But last night, I woke up and found mud on my feet. The doctors say it's PTSD, that I'm reliving trauma. Maybe they're right. But when I told them about the whistling outside my window, they looked at me like I was crazy. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Sometimes when it gets quiet enough, you can hear things in the woods calling you. They sound almost human. They want you to come closer, to step off the trail, to find them. If you ever go hiking in Lost Creek or anywhere near there, and you hear whistling, don't whistle back. Don't look for where it's coming from. Just run. Run and don't look behind you, because if you see it, if you see the one with the hollow mouth, it's already too late. Story the end.
Story number 2.
My name is Travis Miller. I'm 31 years old, and I swear on my life that what I'm about to tell you is true. It happened 3 years ago, in the summer of 2022, in the backcountry trails of the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee. I used to hike alone a lot back then, camping out for days, recording nature sounds, taking photos. I thought I knew the woods better than anyone. I was wrong. It started like any other solo hike. I parked my old Jeep at the trailhead around 7 a.m., the sun just creeping over the trees. I had enough supplies for 3 nights: tent, water filter, dried food, and a GPS tracker. The air smelled clean and crisp, pine and damp soil. I remember feeling calm, free. I planned to hike about 15 miles to an old fire lookout tower that had been abandoned since the 60s. People said it had the best view of the range, and honestly, I wanted to see if it was still standing. The first day was easy. I crossed creeks, climbed rocky ridges, and saw deer and hawks gliding over the valley. But around late afternoon, the forest started to feel different. It got quiet, not the normal kind of forest quiet where you still hear insects and wind, but a dead, heavy silence. Even the birds stopped singing. I figured maybe a predator was nearby, like a bear, so I tightened my pack straps and moved faster. By 6 p.m., I reached a clearing where I decided to set up camp. I built a small fire, cooked some ramen, and leaned back against a log, watching the flames flicker. That's when I noticed something strange. The trees surrounding the clearing looked burnt, but only halfway up their trunks, as if fire had licked them and stopped midway. It gave the illusion of hundreds of dark, human-like silhouettes watching me. I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. That night, I woke up to the sound of someone walking around my tent, slow, deliberate steps crunching the dry leaves. My first thought was bear. I froze, listening. The steps circled once, twice, then stopped right behind my tent. I could see the shadow of legs, human legs, against the thin fabric. I whispered, "Who's there?" But there was no reply. Then, after a long silence, the footsteps walked away. I waited another 10 minutes before daring to unzip the flap. No one was there. The next morning, I saw boot prints around my camp. Not fresh hiking boots like mine. These were old, deep, uneven, almost like 1 foot dragged. I should have gone back to my Jeep right then, but curiosity got the better of me. I kept hiking toward the lookout. Around noon, I reached an old sign half swallowed by moss. It read, "Cumberland Watchtower, built 1959. The arrow pointed up a narrow, overgrown path. The forest was dense, tangled with vines. The further I climbed, the colder it got, even though it was late July. Then I noticed the smell, wet metal and decay. I found the tower about an hour later, standing crooked on rusted stilts. The steps creaked as I climbed, each one protesting under my weight. The top was covered in graffiti and old ranger gear. There was even a rotting cot in one corner. The view was incredible, rolling mist over endless green, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. That's when I saw it. Down at the tree line, near the base of the hill, stood a figure. It looked like a man, tall, wearing some kind of tattered uniform. Maybe an old ranger outfit. He wasn't moving, just staring up at me. I waved, shouted, "Hey, you okay down there?" He didn't respond. I blinked, and he was gone. I rushed down the stairs, thinking maybe he'd fallen or walked off. But when I got to the ground, there was no one. Just the forest and that same awful silence pressing in. I checked my map to head back, but the trail behind me didn't look the same. It felt like the woods had shifted somehow. The air had that thick, humming pressure that makes your ears pop. I walked for maybe 2 hours trying to retrace my steps, but the sun seemed stuck behind the trees. I couldn't tell what direction I was going anymore. That's when I saw smoke. I thought maybe it was another camper's fire, so I followed it. The smell of burning wood was strong, but when I reached the clearing, my stomach turned cold. It was my campfire. The same one from the night before. Same burnt logs, same scorched circle. But my tent, it wasn't there anymore. Instead, there was a torn piece of fabric pinned to a tree with a rusted knife. It was part of my tent door, and on it were smeared, muddy fingerprints. I don't know how long I stood there. I could feel someone watching me again, like eyes boring into the back of my neck. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. That's when I saw him again, the man in the ranger uniform. Only this time, I could see his face, or what was left of it. Half his jaw was missing, skin torn down to bone. His eyes were black pits, no light in them at all. His uniform was scorched, like he'd been burned alive. I stumbled backward, tripped over my bag, and he started walking toward me, slow, dragging one leg just like the footprints. I ran. I don't even remember choosing a direction. I just ran until my lungs burned. At one point, I looked back, and he was gone. I stopped to catch my breath, crouching behind a fallen tree. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unzip my pack to grab my flashlight. When I turned it on, I saw something that made my blood freeze. On the tree I was hiding behind, there were carvings, hundreds of them, names, dates, and the words, "He walks the ridge." Every instinct in me screamed to get out. I followed the slope downhill until it was too dark to see. I pitched my backup tarp and forced myself to stay awake. Around midnight, I heard it again, the footsteps. This time, they didn't stop at my tent. They circled faster and faster, like someone running around me. I could hear heavy breathing, dragging, whispering. My name, Travis. I swear to God I heard it, deep, gurgling like it came from underwater. Travis, you shouldn't have come. I bolted out with my flashlight, screaming, waving it in all directions. Nothing, just the dark. But when I turned back toward the tarp, I saw him standing over it. The ranger. His head tilted at an impossible angle. The firelight caught his uniform patch. It said, "C. Harper." I didn't sleep after that. I just ran through the night until the sun rose. When daylight came, I finally reached a road, a dirt service route that led back toward the main trail. I collapsed when I saw a park ranger's truck parked there. The man inside looked about 60, white beard, real uniform. I rushed over, yelling, half crying. He got out, confused, asked what happened. I told him everything, the footsteps, the burnt trees, the man in the tower. He frowned and said, "Son, that tower's been gone for years. It burned down in the 60s. Lightning strike killed the ranger who was stationed there. Name was Charles Harper." I thought he was joking. I told him I'd been inside that tower just yesterday. He shook his head and told me there wasn't a tower left standing within miles. Then he drove me back to my Jeep. When I checked my GPS tracker later, it showed my route, normal for the first day. But after noon on the second day, the map showed me looping the same 1-mile area for almost 12 hours. I had never left the clearing. I quit solo hiking after that. I couldn't even walk near the woods for months. But here's the thing that still keeps me up. 2 weeks after I got home, I went through my photos. Most were normal, but the last one I took from the lookout tower, it showed me standing at the railing. Only thing is, I don't remember setting a timer. And behind me, through the reflection in the glass, there was a shape. A man in a ranger uniform. Half burnt, smiling. I deleted that picture immediately. But sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I still hear the crunch of boots on dry leaves. I still hear that whisper. "Travis, you shouldn't have come." Story the end.
Story number 3.
My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 28 years old. And what I'm about to tell you happened last October, somewhere deep in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. I know how that sounds, like one of those campfire stories people tell to scare you, but I swear on my life, This isn't a story. It's something that still wakes me up almost every night. It started when my friends, Jake, Melissa, and Kyle, planned a weekend hike along the old Klingman's Ridge Trail. We were all outdoor people, or at least thought we were. The ridge was known for its views, and apparently an old trail that had been closed off for decades because of land instability. That's what the park sign said. But Jake had this habit of wanting to go off the beaten path. Real adventure, he called it. He brought an old printed map from some hiking forum, one that showed the original trail that supposedly looped back around to the main path. I should have said no when I saw the trees change, not in color, but in silence. We started hiking around 10 a.m. It was cloudy, fog hanging low, the kind that turns the forest into a gray blur where the horizon doesn't really exist. For the first few hours it was normal. Birds, distant woodpeckers, the crunch of leaves. We joked, took pictures, and even made fun of the trail closed sign that was nailed to a tree, half rotted and covered in moss. By 3 p.m., we reached what Jake called the fork. That's where the old path supposedly branched off. The map showed a faint dotted line leading down into a hollow between two ridges. The air there was cooler, heavier somehow. Melissa said it smelled weird, like old rain and iron. I noticed it too, like something wet had been sitting there too long. But Jake, stubborn as ever, started down the slope before any of us could stop him. Kyle followed, and I didn't want to be the guy who chickened out. The trees got denser, darker. The sunlight couldn't reach through. Everything felt muffled, even our voices. At one point, I turned around, and the path behind us had almost disappeared under fallen leaves. We couldn't see where we'd come from. That should have been the moment to turn back. But Jake said, "Don't worry, man, we'll loop back before sunset." Sunset came faster than I thought. By 5, it was already getting dim. The fog thickened, rolling between the trees like smoke. We hadn't seen another hiker since morning. No birds, no insects. Just this quiet, pressing kind of stillness. It felt like the forest was listening, watching. Then came the smell. Melissa noticed it first, a thick, metallic odor, almost like rust or blood. Jake thought it was a dead animal. We followed the smell downhill until we found a clearing. There was something there, a wooden post that splintered and gray, sticking up from the ground. Tied to it were bones, human bones. Not arranged naturally either. They were bound together with what looked like vines or sinew. The skull was cracked open, hollow, like something had scooped it out. Melissa screamed. Kyle dropped his backpack. Jake just stared, muttering, "Jesus Christ!" I remember stepping closer, against every instinct in me. The bones weren't fresh, old, darkened, and cracked. But what scared me most wasn't the skeleton. It was what was carved into the post above it, symbols, spirals, and something that looked like a set of eyes staring outward. I swear to God they looked carved recently. The wood still had clean shavings at its base. That's when we heard the first noise. Not an animal. Not the wind. It was this low groan that seemed to echo through the trees, like something trying to mimic a human sound. Kyle shouted, asking who was there. No answer. Then another noise, closer. A soft crack, like someone stepping on a branch just behind us. We turned around, and for a split second, I saw movement. Something pale between the trees. Not a person. Too thin, too long. The head was tilted, like it was watching us from a distance. We ran. We didn't even talk about it. Instinct took over. I remember crashing through branches, my arms getting scratched, hearing Melissa sob behind me. The fog made it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. I could hear Jake yelling, "This way! This way!" But his voice kept shifting. Sometimes it sounded right next to me, sometimes far off, like the forest was playing tricks. We finally stopped when Kyle tripped over a log and fell. I helped him up, and that's when we realized Jake wasn't with us. Neither was Melissa. The silence returned, thick and absolute. I called their names until my throat burned. No answer. Just that smell again, stronger now. We searched for almost an hour before we heard it. Melissa's voice, faint, crying for help. "Ethan, please, over here!" I grabbed Kyle, and we followed the sound, hearts pounding. The fog got so dense it felt solid. The voice led us down a narrow gully where the ground turned muddy and soft. We saw her shape kneeling in the mist, her hair hanging down, face buried in her hands. "Melissa!" I ran to her, but when she lifted her head, it wasn't her. Her face was wrong. The eyes were too wide, the mouth stretched too far back, like her skin had been pulled tight around something that wasn't supposed to fit inside. And the sound that came from her mouth wasn't crying anymore. It was this clicking, choking noise, like something rattling against bone. I froze. Kyle screamed and fell backward. The thing started to crawl toward us, fast, jerking like a spider. I pulled Kyle and we ran again. I don't even know where. I could hear it behind us, that wet dragging sound and those clicks echoing off the trees. Eventually, we burst into another clearing, and that's when I saw Jake. He was standing in the middle of it, facing away. His flashlight was still on, pointing into the woods. I shouted his name. He didn't move. I went closer, and when I touched his shoulder, he turned around. His face was gone. Not torn off, just gone. Smooth skin where features should have been. Eyes, nose, mouth, nothing. Just skin, like clay that had been pressed flat. Kyle vomited. I dropped the flashlight. When it hit the ground, I saw something standing behind Jake. Tall, almost skeletal, its limbs wrong. Too long, too many joints. Its skin looked wet, grayish, and stretched. It tilted its head like it was curious, and I swear I could feel it looking at me even though it didn't have eyes. Then the flashlight went out. I don't remember running. I don't remember how long. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I woke up on the edge of the ridge trail, covered in mud and scratches. My backpack was gone. My watch said 7:30 a.m. Kyle was lying next to me, unconscious but breathing. We were both freezing. Rangers found us later that afternoon after we stumbled onto the main trail. We told them everything. They searched for Jake and Melissa for 3 days. They never found them. The rangers said it was probably a wrong turn and wildlife. But they didn't explain the symbols we showed them on the map, or the bones, or the scratches on Kyle's back that looked like handprints. A few weeks later, I went back. Not far, just to the start of that old path. The trail closed sign was gone. In its place was a fresh wooden board. On it, carved deep into the surface, were those same spiral symbols. And in the middle, written in what looked like burned letters, was one word: returned. I haven't hiked since. Sometimes, though, I still hear the clicking when the house is quiet, when I can't sleep. Once I thought I saw movement at the edge of my backyard, just where the woods start. Something pale watching. I don't think it ever let us go. Story the end.